Unit 9. History. Recording 1. 1.
Revolution. Turning point.
2.
Development. Invention. Discovery.
3.
Advance. Progress.
4.
Movement.
5.
Foundation.
6.
Spread.
Unit 9. Recording 2. 1.
Machu Picchu would have remained unknown if Hiram Bingham hadn't explored the Andes in Peru.
2.
If the I Love You virus had been found earlier, 45 million computers wouldn't have crashed in 2000.
3.
The development of modern medicine would have been different if Alexander Fleming hadn't discovered penicillin.
4.
If John Lennon hadn't met Paul McCartney, they wouldn't have formed the Beatles.
5.
The invention of the mobile phone wouldn't have been possible if Alexander Graham Bell hadn't invented the telephone.
6.
If the Nestor Film Company hadn't opened a film studio there in 1911, Hollywood would have remained a quiet town.
Unit 9. Recording 3. 1.
The name Generation X was made famous by Coupland's novel.
2.
Sometimes different names are invented by the media.
3.
The term Generation 9/11 was used by Newsweek magazine in 2001.
4.
People growing up after the war were given the name baby boomers.
5.
In the future, today's babies will be known as Generation Z.
6.
A book about millennials was written by William Strauss and Neil Howe.
7.
The generation born from 1910 to 1920 is sometimes called the greatest generation.
8.
Younger people have always been criticised by older people for their bad behaviour.
Unit 9. Recording 4. 1.
Yeah, I grew up in the 90s. For me, film and music are two important aspects of my life, and it was a fantastic decade for both of those. In terms of films, there were some excellent ones that came out. My favourites being Forrest Gump, Pulp Fiction and The Shawshank Redemption. In terms of the music, probably the most famous bands of the time was Oasis and Blur. One of the most memorable moments for me of the 90s was Euro 96, obviously the football tournaments. I was lucky enough to go to the opening ceremony myself. Obviously, as we was entering the end of the millennium, the celebrations towards the end of the 90s were huge, as were the actual celebrations on the night. Tony Blair was elected, so it was the first sort of Labour government for a long time. And also Mother Teresa died. Mother Teresa was the famous charitable missionary.
2.
The 70s. Well, they were wonderful, I think. If I'm asked, was it a good decade or a bad decade? Personally, I have to think it was a good decade to grow up in. I think it's very lucky. I think of it as a very lucky experience when generally the world that I lived in, which was London and England, which was the post-war period and therefore an era of a certain amount of restriction, was all ending and things were freeing up. And that happened just at the time that I was leaving home and finding my own independence. It all seemed as though it happened at the same time. Technology was changing and improving. Everything seemed to be developing and getting better in many ways. the fashion was getting rid of short hair and regimented kind of looks. Individuality was very much the order of the day. Great people were emerging in the arts. John Lennon, for example, was an icon for me, I think, as a creative artist with a message as well in his work. Great artists in film, Scorsese, Taxi Driver, Spielberg, Duel. These were emerging artists of tremendous skill and artistry, but they were just starting out then when I was.
3.
I was a teenager in the 80s, and I remember thinking that I didn't like a lot of the fashion and the music from back then, but now it's obvious in retrospect that I did quite like it. I love looking back on like a nostalgia trip at the way we used to dress and how much hair gel I used and how much hairspray the girls used. And now in the 2000s, there's like a sort of a trip back into that time. You know, girls are wearing big earrings again and geometric patterns on their clothes. The music in the 80s became quite computerised sounding, quite electronic, and disco faded away. Although we did still have soul, there were people like Luther Vandross and Billy Ocean making soul music. New Romantic was another style that came out in the early 80s where the men started wearing lots of makeup and had big shoulders and small waists. And there was Madonna, was a big trendsetter for girls. And at one point she cut her hair really short in the mid-80s and almost like a boy's. And then all the girls started cutting their hair short too. I wasn't very fashionable myself. I used to spend most of my money on records, not clothes. There were some good films around in the 80s too, things like Back to the Future with Michael J. Fox, Desperately Seeking Susan with Madonna, E.T., Police Academy. I'm going to be 40 this year, and I reckon my birthday party is probably going to be a big nostalgia trip back to the 80s.
Unit 9. Recording 5.
So question 1.
Yes, about the religious leader. Any ideas?
Spoke out against racism in South Africa. Worked as an English teacher.
Well, it could be a few different people, couldn't it?
I have no idea. Yeah, I don't know.
Want to guess?
If I was to guess, no, I haven't a clue. I haven't a clue on this one.
Okay,
I'm sorry.
I'm going to tell you it was B. Desmond Tutu.
Oh, really?
Yes.
Oh, no, I didn't know that.
Fair enough.
I didn't know that.
All right, so the second one is about the politician being killed by her own bodyguards.
Well, it's definitely not A.
Okay, yes.
Definitely not A. So it's B or C.
Can you remember?
I can't remember. I've forgotten.
So you're just going to have to guess.
Yes.
Come on, I'm going to press you now. If you used to know it, you can have a good... It's in there
I'm going to
somewhere.
go for B.
Oh, no, it was the other one. It was C, Indira Gandhi.
Oh.
Never mind.
Oh, well, I didn't know that.
There you are. So, number 3. Any ideas about the anthropologist feeding bananas to wild chimpanzees?
Jane Goodall, Louis
Leakey?
Louis Lee.
Don't even... Margaret Mead.
Well, I'm sure it isn't Margaret Mead.
How about B?
I'm sure it isn't. I'm sure it isn't B.
Okay.
So that leaves A.
You leaves with A. Very good. It was Jane Goodall.
Yes, that's right.
Okay. And now the scientist.
Which inspirational scientist spent his free time playing
free
the
time.
violin when he wasn't changing the world? I think I know this one.
Okay.
Yeah.
Well, I'll be careful because
I'm not 100% certain.
I'm
not 100% certain, but it might be Albert Einstein.
Right. You saying B?
B.
Yes, you're
B.
right.
Excellent.
And we're almost there with number 5, the activist that refused to give up the bus seat. You must remember this.
Oh no, I can't remember.
You must.
It's one of those things I used to know. I used to know, but I've forgotten.
All right.
Che Guevara?
Sure.
No. But
okay, it was C. Rosa Parks. No, you're right. You didn't remember. So the last.
That's interesting. It's interesting.
Last,
dear.
The last one then.
Right.
which amazingly original and creative writer was banned from the US for years? Have you heard of them all?
Well, I know it wasn't Charles Dickens.
Right.
So it's one of the other two. Ooh.
Go on, have a guess.
I'm going to go for C.
Good choice.
That's right.
C.
That's right. Excellent.
Well done.
Excellent.
You did very well.
Yeah, not too bad.
Unit 9. Recording 6. 1,
It was B, Desmond Tutu.
Oh, really?
2,
Yes.
Oh, no, I didn't know that.
3,
So that leaves
You
A.
leaves with A. Very good. It was Jane Goodall.
Yes, that's right.
4,
So the
Oh,
last
that's interesting. It's interesting.
5,
That's right.
C.
That's right. Excellent.
Well done.
Excellent.
Unit 9. Recording 7.
Okay, well, someone whose work really influenced me is Gabriel García Márquez. I like his short stories, but I fell in love with his novels, particularly 100 Years of Solitude. That book really made its mark on me. Anyway, well, Márquez is a Colombian writer. I think he was born in 1928. He's a Nobel Prize winner. He won the Nobel Prize in Literature, and his books have been translated into dozens of languages. He's one of the best-known writers in the style of what's called magic realism. This means he writes kind of realistically, but there's magic. I mean, magical things happen in his books, like ghosts appear and kind of crazy things happen. I'm a big fan of that type of writing. Anyway, his novels are kind of funny, but it's black humour or satire. He invents all these amazing, unforgettable characters like corrupt officials and devoted lovers, vicious policemen and stupid revolutionaries. And through it all, you're laughing at the characters, but you also see their world is falling apart. I haven't read his work in Spanish, only English, but the style is brilliant. His dialogue is fast and funny, and he writes amazing descriptions of places and people. And, well, it was finding Marquez's work as a teenager that really made me become a reader.